Okay, welcome back everybody. So today we are going to be working on the second part of the collage project. Um, at this point, everybody should have all of their photos ready to go. Um, you should have at least a couple of subjects to choose from, a couple of objects to choose from, and maybe a couple of textures to choose from. So make sure you have some really good ones, and you're going to want ones that you have taken. Anybody can find anything on the internet, but we really want pictures that you have taken that are really, really sharp, that are going to be easy to use for this project. So let's go ahead and get started. So for this project, we're going to go ahead and create a new file. This one, we're going to make it a print file. And we're going to create our own over here. And we're going to do this as pixels. And we're going to do 4,000 by 4,000. Now, since this is a print piece, we are going to want to keep it at 300 pixels per inch. And we are going to use CMYK. Because this is a print piece, we're going to want to make it sure it's CMYK. We can have a background as white, and we will go ahead and name this. When you name it, you're going to name it collage and your last name. And hit create. And that should bring you a nice square artboard. And this will be what you will create your collage on. So in order to kind of get started, what we're going to do is begin by bringing in our subject. So for mine, on my desktop here, I'm going to go ahead and I have a lot of great ones to choose from, but I really do like this picture here. It's a little more grainy than I would like to see, and it may be really difficult to cut out, but I think for my project, this is the one I would like to use. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to say open with Photoshop, and that's what we're going to do. And what you'll notice is that it went ahead and opened in a new tab, and that's what we want. So we have our projects over here, and then I have Mr. Brown over here, and he is all ready to go. So we're going to begin by selecting our subject, and at this point, you guys should be pretty familiar with how to select your subject. You can choose different ways over here, whether you choose your lasso, your polygonal, your magnetic. But I'm going to try this new interesting way that may work out really well. This is a new tool. And we're going to, right here at the bottom, you should have this really handy dandy toolbar. And what we're going to do is we're going to see if how well it would do selecting the subject. So we're going to go ahead and click on that. Let's see what it does. It looks like it did pretty well. At this point, what I would love to do is go ahead and kind of clean it up a little bit. So I'm going to go, I have it selected over here, and we're going to modify the selection. We're going to use the select and mask option. And what this will do is kind of create, we've kind of looked at this before, but it kind of creates what is already done. So I like to go in here and do the overlay. It gives me a really good look at what this actually looks out like. Now, for my subject, I really kind of want to add this piece in here because I feel like it kind of tells a story. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and hit this button over here, and I'm going to make sure the plus is selected. I'm going to make my size a little bit bigger. I feel like it's going to be easier that way. And I'm going to add this piece to the selection. And it should automatically find the pieces for you. If it doesn't, then you may have to go in a little bit tighter. But you can kind of pick and choose what's going to work best for you. Now, the other part that I'm also seeing here, and I think I'm going to see if I can just zoom right in there, is this part right here looks a little strange. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that, and I'm going to click minus, and this is way big, so I'm going to use the left bracket and just kind of make that a little bit smaller. And I'm just going to kind of clean that up just a little bit. Now, just like we were doing with the clone yourself, it may take a few times to really get this the way you want it to be, but taking the time to really clean up those edges is really going to make a huge difference in the way your final piece looks. So really take some time and really make sure that it looks just like you want it to look. And I think that we're doing pretty good here. Now, I know that he looks really grainy, but for my purposes, I think that he's going to work out really well. So when you're kind of done with selecting him, I think that this looks pretty good. I might take some of this out of this selection just because I don't know that I really like it. Once you're kind of done and you feel like it's good, I'm going to feather that edge just a smidge, not very much because otherwise it looks fake. But then you're going to hit OK. And you'll find the marching ants go around it. Now, at this point, you're going to want to copy it and paste it into your collage. So there's a couple of different ways you can do it. You can go File or Edit, Copy, or you can just hit the Command C button. So that's what I'm going to do, Command C. And I'm going to come over here and go Edit, Paste, or Command V. Now, because this was a smaller image, it came in pretty small. So we have to be really careful because if you make it too big, it's going to come through really pixelated and it's just really probably not going to look very well. So I'm going to hit, this one does have some of those properties, and you can see, especially on the edges, he kind of gets washed out, and that is not necessarily what you want. For me, for the purposes of this, I'm going to kind of stick with him because I really want this to be part of the next part of that. But now for mine, if I click on it, it's going to automatically show these transform controls or the box. If yours doesn't, you can just click this little check mark here and it'll show you that box. And remember, this is the free transform, so you could pretty much do whatever you want with that. So for me, I'm kind of going to stick him right there. Now for this, this step is the step that I really want you to do. So regardless of what your photo is, this is an important step. So what we're going to do is we're going to desaturate this. Now I know that this one's already a black and white, but I want to show you the process so that you know, because I will expect that your subject is desaturated. So we're going to go to Image, Adjustments, and we're gonna hit this desaturate. And it kind of gives it almost an antique look. And then from here, you can kind of play with some of those levels like before. So I'm gonna go to image, adjustments, and we're gonna hit the levels and just see how we want it to look. I think I'm gonna make him a little darker, add a little more contrast to him. And a little more of those midtones. You can do what you feel looks best for your composition. Okay, so now we have our printmaker. He's right in the middle. On our layer here, I want to make sure to go ahead and double click on that and go ahead and name it. Okay. Now the next thing we want to do is kind of create a space for him to sort of live on. And for me, this is probably going to be maybe one of those textures that I have. So at this point, I feel pretty confident that I like the way this is looking. So I'm going to go back into my photo and I'm going to go ahead and close it out. And I'm not going to save it. You don't have to save it because we no longer need that. So I'm going to go ahead and open up another photo. I'm going to double click and let's see. I really like the idea of having something like this or maybe even something like this behind him. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and open this up. And I might open this one up. I'm just going to right click and open with Photoshop. And as you notice, it comes in. I'm also going to go ahead and see, I'd like to pull this one in here too. So we're going to open that one too. And all I did there, if you didn't notice, it was I double clicked on it and I just clicked and dragged it in here. Okay. Now, at this point, we have two choices. We have our paper right here, and then we have this paper right here. Now, for this paper, I think I'm going to take a minute, and I'm going to adjust this photo. I'm going to hit the levels, and I really want to kind of brighten that photo up. This is a silly game that we got for Christmas, and it's kind of a fun. I might even add a little bit more of those midtones, and I'm gonna hit OK. Now what I want to do is I also think that I want to kind of rotate this. So I'm gonna go image rotation, and I think I want to make it to where you can't quite read it. So I'm gonna do counterclockwise 90 degrees. And this is kind of what we're gonna fall with. Now I want to create something that's going to be interesting, and so I'm going to sort of create an odd shape out of this. So I'm going to go over here to my lasso tool, and I'm just going to kind of mosey and see and pick out something that isn't really like your regular shape, and make sure that you close out your shape by finding where that little O is at the end. And when you're done, you'll create a really cool effect right there. And so that's great. That's what we want. So we're going to go ahead and copy that. I'm just going to do Command C. And I'm going to go back to my collage and hit Command V. And you'll notice that, oh, I'm going to go ahead and close that and deselect. You'll notice that when it pops in, it's going to look pretty cool. It's just the shape that was selected over here, whatever shape that is. And I think that that's a pretty neat shape. And what I want to do is, I don't want this to be in front of the printmaker. I want it to be behind him. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the layer over here, and I'm going to click and drag it behind the printmaker. Now, I really want to make it to where these two pieces can not quite be the same look. And so this is where we're going to kind of have some color popping in. Now I still have my transform box around here, so I'm just going to hit the check mark and it will drop it in place. Now, what I really kind of want to do with this piece is I want to create a really cool color background for that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to colorize this. So, but in order to do that, I really, I kind of need to figure out what colors I want to do. So you can go into your swatches and you can, as before, go and find, you know, whatever color plan you want to do. So we'll go into Safari, and we will go and look up Adobe Color. And we have this great color theme. So let's go ahead and jump into that. So we're going to go into the color themes. And for mine, I really want something that is going to be shades. And what I'd like to do is do shades of yellow. Now you can, by all means, and I might even do something not like a monochromatic and stick with yellows and blacks. You can choose whichever one works best for you. For me, I really kind of want something that's going to really pop out. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this, and I think that this is going to be kind of my color palette right here. All right, so what I want to do is go ahead and color this piece of paper. So I'm going to go to Image Adjustments, and I want to do the color, the hue saturation. So if you remember, this is kind of what we use to kind of change the color and the saturation of a piece when we were looking at all of our color stuff. So, but this time we're going to do something a little different. We're going to hit this colorize button. And what that does is it actually creates all of the colors. And we're going to go over here to yellow because that's kind of what I was looking at doing. And I might create something kind of neat looking like that. Now you can choose to do this, or you can choose to leave it the way you have it. But we are going to use color in this piece. So whether you use it this way or a different way, that I will give you some creative license on that. Okay, this looks pretty good to me. It looks pretty nice. When I'm pretty happy with it, I'm gonna hit OK, and I may even make that just a smidge smaller. And of course, you can either hit enter or double click and it'll drop it where you want it to be. Now at this point, you can always move things around. You can always replace them. This is the fun part about creating collages on Photoshop, is that you can really kind of play with, you know, how you want this to look and how you want this to behave and interact with your piece of artwork. I just kind of like the way it looks when it's not quite straight. Okay, so the next thing I want to do, I'm going to go ahead and leave that open because I may end up using something else on this. I'm not quite sure. But the next thing that I want to do is I want to add in some of those objects that we have. So let's go ahead and go and open up. So we're going to go File, Open. And I'm going to go into my folder. I really like this brayer. That's kind of a neat thing. And the other thing that I really like was, I really like this type. I thought that that's a really fun piece too. So, I'm going to go ahead and pull in the brayer. Now, you know, you can choose to only have one object. I really suggest that you have more than one, just so that you can, you know, have some choices. Now, if you notice, this brayer is kind of not really in a great, like it's pretty pixelated. And so when we pull it over, it's probably not going to pull over very well. So I may choose something different instead of this brayer. And I may decide to go take some more pictures because this really gets pixelated pretty quickly. And just to kind of show you, if I went ahead and copied this and pasted it over, it's pretty tiny. And if I were to try to make it bigger, oh my goodness, is that pixelated or what? That just doesn't look good. So make sure that your pictures that you're bringing in are a good size because this is obviously not going to work out for us. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete that. Well, it wasn't too bad once I dropped it, but maybe it might work. Let's see. Let's zoom into that. It's still pretty pixelated. I might think about it. Okay, so the next thing that I think that I want to do is I think I want to create, well, I think I want to jump into some of this type. Now, the problem here is that this type is also almost like a texture, kind of the same as this, and it may or may not work, and it may be something that maybe I need to rethink this part. And the cool thing about it is when you're working on this stuff, you can do that. You can move things and switch things out and decide on whether they're going to work or not. So I might, well, I think I have something else planned for that type. So for me, I think I'm going to create a selection of this type. by using the polygonal lasso tool. Actually, I may create a selection out of the elliptical marquee tool. And I'm going to hit Shift. And remember, we can move it after we've done it. And I think I want to use like that part right there. So I'm going to copy that and I'm going to paste it into this. So again, super cool. We're going to pull it behind the printmaker. We're going to rename it as our type. This one over here is newspaper. It's getting really busy, so we may have to change this up. I'm not sure yet. And what might also be a great idea at this point is to do some blending. And I'll show you kind of what that will look like here shortly. I really do like this, the way that this is kind of interacting with other things. What I may decide, though, is to do something a little different. I'm going to go ahead and hide this for right now. And I'm going to create an elliptical tool. And using my Shift, I'm going to create a good. And I think what I'm going to do is I want to fill this up. And we're going to use one of these tools down here. We're going to use the paint bucket tool. And we're going to fill it with a fill color. So let's go ahead and do that. And here is kind of where we can go back and paste kind of that color that we liked. Or if we liked a different color, we can go in there and pick out something else that may work better. I may choose that one. And we're going to color it. We're going to use a normal blending mode. And we're going to hit OK. And now what you notice, and we're going to hit deselect down here, is that now you have a really cool piece that will become kind of a background for that. Now, if I bring this one back in and if I kind of pull it to the front, I can do some really interesting things with this. I'm going to kind of make it a little bit bigger, but one of the cool things that you can kind of create with this is you can do what's called blending modes. So we can click on this and we can come over here and we can choose with that layer chosen, we can choose to do some cool blending. So if I click on this and I click on darken, you'll notice how it kind of changes, multiply, there's a color burn, that's kind of a neat one. And you can kind of go through and you can really change the way things look just by doing this really neat process. I think I really like that one, and I may see how the opacity changes if I just click some of that opacity down a little bit. And a lot of this process is kind of like a play of what you think may really work well for your composition. And you know, sometimes things work great and sometimes they need a little bit more work to flesh them out. But you kind of get to play with it a little bit and see what will work best. I kind of like the way that looks behind there, so I'm going to go ahead and drop it and see how that works. Now this one over here feels like to me that maybe it needs to be a little darker. And I might see if I can do something cool and interesting with that one. Maybe darken it. going to go ahead and adjust this one down a little bit. I just really want that brightness to come down. And as you kind of play with this, you'll kind of find a really good style that's going to work for you. You know, it's just a matter of kind of playing with it and seeing where it kind of falls for you, because that's really where it starts to kind of come to life. I'm going to make sure that colorization is right again. And I might actually stay a little bit at the darker side since we have this really bright color behind him. But you can kind of play with it and see what works best for you. Now with this, I'm still kind of staying within the same kind of parameters of the yellows and the blacks. I kind of want to stick with that as best as I can, that monochromatic color palette. Now, although I really don't have any objects that are going to work for this right now, I almost feel like if I added more objects, it may get a little crazy. So I don't know that I'm going to add any more objects to this right now. But what you can do is you can always kind of create some shapes that would look really neat. And you can do that by using these shape builders. Like I might think about maybe even making some lines. Those might be neat. And I'll come over here and I'm going to fill that with black. And I might even pull that a little bit behind the printmaker. That might be kind of cool. Okay, at this point, I'm using the shape tool to create ellipse shapes and fill them with a color. Make sure you're kind of sticking with the color palette that you've been using. This really helps to keep everything cohesive and together to where it really makes sense. So, and you can play with it. You don't have to put these graphical elements in there. You can really do this with or with whatever object you have. Just create something really interesting. Okay, at this point, I really feel like I'm wanting something else behind him. And so I'm going to try out this piece of paper. I'm going to use my rectangular marquee and find a selection that's going to work out well. I'm going to copy it and hitting Command C and paste it and pull it all the way behind all of the other elements in the collage. I'm going to use the blending mode and see if I can kind of come up with something that is subtle and interesting, but doesn't overpower it. There's just some really great tools here that can help with that. Now, the other thing about the blend mode is it really just depends where it is in your layers panel. So it's really going to affect the things that are either above it or below it. So you're really going to want to make sure that when you're doing this, that you're paying attention to that. Okay, so as we kind of start to create all of these pieces and play with different ways that they can interact with the photo, you'll start to create something that's really, really neat and interesting. And so, what I want you to mainly get out of this is to create something that you're proud of with an interesting subject, some great textures on the background, and also some really fun pieces that work with the composition. And although I didn't use the brayer, you really want to use a couple of good objects that are going to really interact with the photo. I use some of these graphic elements. You are more than welcome to jump into the graphic elements right over here and change them and use them how you kind of see fit. But I really look forward to kind of seeing some really interesting photos and really interesting compositions that that is something to be proud of. So the main thing I want is I want a really good color scheme on this one. You can see it's really a monochromatic color scheme. We have this yellowish color that's kind of brought into here, and then really just black and white. So when you go to hand this in, make sure you save it out as a JPEG. And what I want you to do is save this, and I also want you to save the Photoshop file and put that up. And then in the comments, I want you to write down what your color scheme is so that I can know what that looks like. Well, have fun, good luck, and I can't wait to see some wonderful work.